Hi, everybody. My name is Nancy Morris, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi. I did not make it to the bathroom during the break. I opted to smoke instead, so I hope I make it through. And I would like to welcome the newcomers that are in this room tonight. I was a newcomer to Alcoholics Anonymous one time, and I came to this group about 18 years ago. I lived about 40 miles from here, and just by a stroke of luck, I met somebody out where I was who came to this group, and I found the Pacific Group, and I was a member here for over 15 years until I moved to Minneapolis, where I live now. And in Minneapolis, you get to write your talks. You get to write them all down and read them from the podium. That's really exciting. And one time we went to a meeting, and there was an Al-Anon and an AA speaker at the meeting. And they really talked together. They both came to the podium at the same time. And, one would say 3 sentences and then move over. They were married, and then the other one would finish, and then they'd, trade off. So I think I'm learning tolerance since I moved to Minnesota. When I first moved there, I was thinking, being a member of the Pacific Group, I wonder if that was a blessing or a curse, because, they did not do anything right there, and they still don't. But I'm happy to be here. I never thought that I would be on vacation to California and I'd be living in Minnesota. I didn't even know where it was until I moved there, and I didn't really pay attention in school. But Ed and I are here on vacation, and what we've been doing mostly since we've been here is just going to meetings and going to the yard and going to the 4th of July, and we're having a good time and visiting all of our friends, and it's really fun, and it really makes me feel good. And in Minnesota, everybody goes to treatment, and I was really putting it down a lot. And the other day I thought about it, and I thought, this was like my treatment in being in the Pacific Group. It's like a meeting every single night and moving people and the yard. And I just feel that I was so fortunate to have found this group. And Alcoholics Anonymous, being a member of AA, is the only thing I've ever done consistently in my life, and I've been sober a while now, and it feels really good. A lot of times other things in my life aren't always going real well, but this is always going well, and I can always be a good member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that feels great. I got sober I was living in Newbury Park, California. I was married. I had 3 small boys. And I got sober out there. I started drinking very young. Everybody in my family drank. I would go to the cupboard sometimes to get the vodka when nobody was looking, and it was already water in the bottle, and I had not done it that time. We had a built-in beer keg in our extra refrigerator, and I saved up jars and put them in my closet, and when the keg was emptied at the end of the day and my father would be screaming and yelling, I would go up in my closet and drink the beer that I had up there. Of course, at that time, I never thought, I never tried to figure out why I was drinking. My whole family drank a lot. My 5 brothers are now sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. My father died of alcoholism. My mother's a martyr. She's still a martyr to this day, and every family needs a good martyr. She complained about my father's drinking till the day he died, and the first man she started dating when he died was the worst slipper I ever met. I knew him in AA. She didn't meet him in AA because she didn't go. But I think he was riding his bike down the street one day, and my mom was driving her car, and he was drunk, and he fell off his bike, and her car stopped and picked him up because that was her kind of man, And she stayed with him, and she tried pouring his liquor down the drain and doing all these things, and until that man got sober and stayed sober, and so she couldn't stay with him anymore. And then she married a man who doesn't work, and so she was still real happy in her role. And so my family was very wild when we were growing up. We all went to Catholic school. but people actually moved away from us. The kids told me their parents were selling the house because of our family, and my brothers were out there doing things and being real wild, and I was afraid all the time, and I always wanted attention, like the 10-minute speakers were saying, who I forget their names. No, that's just a joke, Ron. That was just a joke. They were talking about being afraid. I did not know I was afraid. I did not know anything until I quit drinking. And that's when I found out how important alcohol was to me and why I drank. Just like Julie said, she drank because the way she feels standing right up here. And I was really afraid, and I wanted attention all the time, and I would do anything that I could growing up to get attention. My brothers were out getting in trouble and getting arrested, and so I would scrub the floor with a Brillo pad and bake cakes and take care of the family. But I was also, I was a doormat from the day that I was born, and people took advantage of me, and I didn't know that I had any control over that. And I used to walk down the street with a can opener in my hand and scratch paint off of people's cars because of what you made me do, and I didn't want to do it, and that was the only way I could get back. We were just talking about that out here, some of my friends that have been here a while, and I told them that I wanted to do that in sobriety to this one lady here who used to be able to manipulate me a lot, and I was standing at her car one night, but I was sober now, and I was going to do it. And then I remembered that we had to make amends, so I decided not to do that. But so, I just started drinking young, and I pretty much just kept on drinking, and I was told that I would grow up and get married and have children, so that's what I did. And I really drank quite a lot when I was young, and I did a lot of wild things. Whatever you wanted me to do, I would do it. And before I got married, I was working in a dental office. And I took care of everything in that office. I was the bookkeeper, and I ordered supplies. So I paid myself more money than we had agreed on. But I decided that it was okay because I would go in an hour early and shampoo the carpets. And I would stay after work an hour. I would never take a lunch hour. And I would do all this extra work, and he never offered to pay me more money. And I certainly wouldn't ask because he might say no. So I figured it was justified. And since I was the bookkeeper, I worked it all out. And I ordered the supplies, and I would order this big bottle of 5,000 Darvon. And I, like Ron, always preferred alcohol. But when I worked in the dental office, I think from the time I started drinking, I didn't want anyone to know. And I certainly couldn't drink and breathe over people while I'm sucking the water out of their mouths. They couldn't smell alcohol. So I would just take these pills every day, and I never really knew why I was taking them. And I would fill little envelopes full of pills and take them home with me on the weekend. When I was 15 years old, I got pregnant. And, it was really funny because I'd never had a boyfriend, so it was kind of a curious situation. And I was in Catholic school, so I tried to tell them it was like the Immaculate Conception. But the reason that I got pregnant is because this man that I sort of knew, he cleaned the stalls at this stable where I kept a horse. And he lived in a little shack about as big as this podium. And I don't think he had a car or any money or anything. He just lived in this shack. But this man dared me to sneak out of my house, and I had to do it. I had to do whatever you asked me to do. And when I quit drinking, I found out, how I lived my life according to what you were thinking. And if you would like me, I would do whatever you wanted, and I never knew that. So I ended up getting pregnant, and I went away. My parents made this big story up that I was going to visit relatives because they didn't want anyone to know. I was really living with a family, and I'd call my friends all the time and tell them how big I was getting, so it didn't really matter. But I had that baby and gave it up for adoption, came back and finished high school and went to work in the dental office. And then I got married the first time because that's what I was supposed to do. And somebody asked me to get married, and I couldn't hear the word no, and I couldn't say the word no, and we just got married. And so it was during that time, we had 3 kids during this marriage, and we were living out in this house in Newbury Park, and we had gotten this very nice house, tri-level house, and we couldn't afford it. And I kept the bills in a brown paper bag in the front hall closet, and I didn't answer the telephone. And my husband would try to buy furniture and wallpaper and things to make me happy. I was really sad all the time. And it was during that time when we had these kids, and I had to stay in the house with the kids now, and I couldn't be out with other people who drank like I did. And it just became a matter of me drinking every day in that house, and it was just every day I had to come up with another justification why I could take a drink. I did not know that anybody in the world drank like I did. I didn't know anything about this disease of alcoholism. I thought that I was crazy. I thought I should be locked up. I would cry most of the time. I would sit up on top of a dresser in the upstairs bedroom, and the kids would be in bed, and I'd just look out over the valley, and I would cry, and I would just think the world was passing me by and nobody understood me. And during the day, I stopped letting the kids go outside because I was drinking in the morning, and I would have to go get them, and some of the other ladies would be outside, and they would smell it on me, and I didn't want that to happen. And when my neighbors would go out, sometimes I'd sneak through the backyards and go in their house and take pills or liquor or money or whatever I could, whatever I needed. And I put a lock on the kids' door one time because I just couldn't handle them anymore, and I went and sat in my backyard. There was a mountain in my backyard, and I just sat up there, and I drank this bottle of wine and cried, and went back in the house, and the kids had climbed up the front of a dresser, and it was over on top of one of them, and his head was cut open. And another time they were in the backyard, and I wasn't watching them, and one of them drank charcoal lighter, and just a lot of things like this happened, and I could not drink. Every day I tried not to drink. Every day during that period of time I got up and I said, I'm not going to have a drink today. And then I would find a really good reason why I could have one drink. And it was never one drink. And then I would have another. And that never really dawned on me that I did that every single day until I got here. And so that kind of thing just went on, and I was doing crazy things and stealing from stores and seeing old boyfriends and lying and just doing all these things that made me feel horrible inside. And I didn't see any hope for the situation at all. And so we had some people come over one day to watch the Super Bowl, and I made Bloody Marys at the Punch Bowl all day, and I stood there and drank them all day long. And when the last man left, I got in his car and left with him just for fun. And a few hours later, I called my husband, and he didn't know where I went. He had been marking the bottles, and I knew it. He could never catch me. I would just not be caught. And I made new marks on the bottles, upside down, sideways, every which way, so he could not prove that I was drinking this liquor. One time I drank all the vodka, and he didn't drink vodka. I didn't think that was a big problem, and I couldn't replace it, and it was just water in the bottle for him to look at. And some people came by unexpectedly, and they drank vodka. So they got like water and tonic that night for their drink, you know. And I remember being very scared that they were all going to point at me and lock me up. I didn't know what was going to happen. I just thought I'd be locked up for the rest of my life. So that day, my husband yelled at me, and it was just really getting a lot worse every day. So he yelled at me, and I decided to run away from home and leave him and the kids because I knew that I was a bad mother. I knew that when our third son came along, and he was a year old now when I came to AA, I really felt sorry for this child that he had me as a mother. And so I decided to run away, and I picked up the phone and I called this old boyfriend of mine to come get me. And it's like the boyfriend that you had 10 years before, but you always think about him, and so you just go, hi, it's me. And my husband came in the room, and he just looked at me, and he said, I really don't care where you go, but you can't run away from it. And so I was ready. And I was only 26 years old, and when I came to AA, that was very young then. And so I hung up the phone. I called my brother-in-law, who's a Catholic priest. He lived on the East Coast, and I thought he could pray for me. And I knew nothing about this. And he said, go to Alcoholics Anonymous. So that was the night that I went. Somehow we found this meeting. They had moved 3 times, and of course, you know, the way we are, I thought they knew I was coming that night, and so we just kept getting off course. And I was really heavy, and I was into dyeing my hair like every other day during that time because I was bored, locked in the house with my kids. And I would rearrange the furniture and dye my hair, and I would like really rearrange the furniture where the bottom floor became the top floor, and the living room was the bedroom, and all this kind of exciting things. And I would have this couch. I would be pushing this couch up the stairs. You know, I just had nothing else to do. And I was real heavy, and I wore cut-off Levi's, and I wore white T-shirts, and my hair was crackly and orange and falling out, and my face was orange. And I used to be inside my house watching those women on my street, making fun of them in their dresses, and I'd think, well, they're just cleaning their houses. Who are they trying to impress, you know? And I would just wear cut-off Levi's. So I went upstairs this night. We're going to be going to the AA meeting, and I put on my orange polyester pantsuit, and I thought that I looked really nice, and I didn't know that I was going to stand out at this meeting that I was on my way to. And we finally found it. It was on a Sunday night, and it was about 25 after 9 when we finally got to this place. We walked in. There was a man talking at the podium. He finished talking, and there were about 30 people in the room. There was a middle aisle with chairs on either side. And the minute he was finished and the meeting was over, all 30 people came and stood around me. And not only was I like a neon pumpkin, but I started throwing up on the floor. So I couldn't very well hide the fact. I didn't raise my hand. I threw up, you know, like. So these people were standing around me, and they're offering me cake and coffee and phone numbers and literature and everything. And then I started throwing up, and I ran outside, and they all came outside with me. And I found out later they had not had a newcomer out there in quite a long time. And they wanted one, and they all wanted to be a part of this. And it was kind of a nice evening, and they all stood around me, and they were practically like holding hands and singing and doing like Ring Around the Newcomer or something, you know. So I was standing in the middle of them, and I was still throwing up. I was very sick. I'd been drinking all day. I always threw up. I broke blood vessels in my eye. I looked like a monster most of the time. And while they're standing around me, this one man looks up at the sky and the stars, and he said to the other people, "We alcoholics are such lucky people. We're chosen by God." There's no way I thought I was chosen by God that night. And I did not get it, but I really get it today, and I really believe that today. I personally feel fortunate to be an alcoholic. I have this little pamphlet, this little card I carry with me that says why we are chosen, and I really like that because we are the only people that can talk to another alcoholic. We are the only ones that can share our experience, strength, and hope with other alcoholics, and they get it. I got it when people shared with me. I was just amazed when I got here at what I heard people talking about. And so I started on my merry way to my sobriety that night, you know. I went home. I was afraid to stay there. They wanted me to stay and talk to them, and I wouldn't do it. The next day they showed up at my house, 3 women, and they read to me from some of the books as Bill sees it in the 24-hour book, and, you know, it didn't really matter. They told me their stories. And I did today. I was talking to a new girl today on the phone who has 6 days of sobriety, and I was doing to her on the phone today, just what I'm doing right now. And it feels really good to do that. And it really does feel like a blessing to me to be able to do that. And so I started in my sobriety. That was in January of 71. I drank a half gallon of Spinata in May of 71, so that's my sobriety from that time. During that 4 months, I loved Alcoholics Anonymous. Because I quit drinking, I didn't suddenly get self-worth, and I didn't suddenly feel real good about myself and feel confident. And even though hundreds of women gave me their numbers, I couldn't call these numbers. I used to sit at my telephone wishing I could call them up and talk to them. I didn't know what I was supposed to talk to them about. I didn't think they'd remember me. I thought I would have to describe myself to them. And in those days, everything was really negative and bad, and I would have to say I'm the fat, ugly, orange person that was at the meeting. And there was no way I could say anything nice about myself. And so I used to just sit and look at this number and wish I could talk to this lady. And then I thought, well, when she does realize who it is, she'll go, oh, it's her. And that's how I always felt, like that people didn't want me around them, and I was a bother to them. But I kept going to meetings. I did not get a sponsor because I was afraid to ask anybody. I thought they'd do it and they wouldn't want to, because that's how I operated all my life. I did things I didn't want to do because I wanted to please you and I wanted you to like me. So I did go, and pressure built up during that time, of course. I didn't know what we were supposed to talk to a sponsor about, the everyday things that we come across, that we, little resentments and self-pity and things like that. And so the pressure built up during that time, and then I convinced myself that I could take a couple of tranquilizers, and I went to my mother's house and stole some. And then because I did that, I drank this wine. And that night I went out driving around while I was drinking the wine, because before I came here I thought I was really bad, and then I came here and I heard all your stories and I thought, see, I'm nothing, and I wanted to be like the worst one here or something, And I drove around drinking this Spinata wine out of the bottle, and when I was finished I threw it out on the freeway, and I was hoping to go to jail so I could tell you about that. And it didn't happen, and I went home and woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning, face down again on my blue shag carpeting in my throw-up one more time. And I got up the next morning, and I didn't really have the hope that I had had 4 months prior to that. I was really scared. I didn't think I would ever drink again when I first got here. And I haven't since that time, and I'm very grateful for that. And I was married, as I said. And 5 minutes after I got sober, I wanted to get a divorce. And my sponsor suggested that I wait about a year, and so I did. But during that year, I was kind of snatched up by what I call a professional newcomer snatcher. And, every time when I talk, I just turn it over to God, because I don't ever know what to say. And I did so many things in my sobriety, probably more in my sobriety than I did when I was drinking, and I certainly don't recommend it, but I can guarantee you if I did it, other people have done it or are doing it too. And during that time, I was seeing this guy for a year, and I felt so guilty and so bad, and I felt like I was the only one doing it, and I prayed that I would go to a meeting and hear somebody talk about it so that I could talk to that person. And the thing, that was drilled into me when I got here was to go to an AA meeting every single night. And Alcoholics Anonymous has to come first in my life. And I did that. And I think that's why I didn't have to drink over this, because I went to my meeting every single night. If somebody needed a ride home, I gave them the ride. Then I went and did whatever I was going to do. But I did my 4th step shortly before I turned a year sober. And the day that I was supposed to do my 5th step with my sponsor, I called her up and I resigned from Alcoholics Anonymous, because there was no way I was going to read this to her. Even though I had been to meetings and I had heard so many speakers, and I had been to the Women's Stag every single Friday night, and I heard everything we needed to talk about and all my secrets, but it just seemed so hard for me to admit it myself that I had done these things. But finally I talked to some other people, and we did my 5th step that night, and it felt good. And I think that was probably when I began to feel a part of Alcoholics Anonymous, like I did belong here. I did something that was really hard for me to do. And I stayed married for another couple years, and my sponsor said, stay in the marriage and do what you can to be a good wife and a good mother. And during that time, I was very depressed, and I get a little impatient where I live now with people actually get up to the podium and they say they actually admit from the podium that they're on medication for depression, and they're put on this medication within their first 30 days of sobriety because they feel a little bad, and it really makes me mad. And I know that I've been very depressed, and I know that a lot of you have been very depressed, and some of you may be very depressed tonight. But we are given the greatest tools in the world to work with here. And, I'm so glad that nobody ever did that to me, offered me some pills. First of all, everybody I know there that's taking these things, they're still so depressed, so obviously they're not working. And, it's like they're told you're a manic depressive, so here I am, a depressive. I used to sit in my closet and cry, and we had a gun, and I used to sit in there and hold the gun and wish I could kill myself because I did not like sobriety sometimes. I did not like facing what I was without alcohol, but that's what I was. That's what I was my whole life. And when I realized that I couldn't get any better unless I realized what I had to work on, we weren't going to get anywhere, And it's not easy. It's not easy for anybody, but we have such a magnificent support system here that there are so many people in this room that I have called in the middle of the night sometimes, and people here that went on job interviews with me, sat in the car because I was afraid, and that kind of made me mad about myself. Like at 3 years of sobriety, I got divorced, and I had to go out and get a job and an apartment, and I didn't know how to do it, and I was really afraid, and that kind of made me mad. I didn't like that about myself because when I was growing up, I would beat you up, and so I thought that I was really tough, but I wasn't tough at all, and I was like, 10 years old or 9 years old, and I was afraid of everybody. And, people would go with me on these job interviews, and they would go with me to help me find an apartment. And at 3 and 4 years of sobriety, I still wasn't that well. And if I was applying for a job and they'd say, what salary do you want? I would say, whatever you want to pay me is okay. And it's taken years and years and years to get I have confidence today, and I have self-worth, and I really like myself today, and I wouldn't want to be anybody else. And for years here, I looked around, and there was always somebody else that I wished that I was that person. And that's just not the case today. And I just think, this group is just amazing. I mean, there's just, everybody says it, and it's the truth. There's nothing like it in the whole world, and I feel like I was so fortunate to have found this group. And I've had slow growth, but, as I said, the support system here is fantastic, and we all do these things together. And I went to work, I got a divorce, and I went, and I got this apartment, and I got a job as a dental assistant. That's all I had ever done. And before I got divorced, I went to work in a locked mental hospital. It was recommended by my sponsor then to try going to work. Maybe that would help me, not so much time to sit home and think about yourself. And I worked in this locked mental hospital for a while, and there was this old lady that belonged to in our group at the time, and I paid her to come to my house and watch my kids. I paid her more money than I made at this mental hospital, and but it was therapeutic, and I was dressing this lady named Serena one time, and I had to be kneeling down, and she kicked me in the face and knocked me over backwards, so she didn't quite fit her name, I guess. But I have had to take kind of like little steps sometimes here. That's not what I wanted to do. And also, like 5 minutes after I got sober, I wanted to go to college. I thought that was important because I'd never gone to college. I tried many times to go and take some classes, and because it was always advised to me to go to AA all the time and do this kind of stuff, and trying to take care of my 3 kids, it just never worked out. And it's an amazing thing because I ended up working in sales after a time, and it was strictly because of the support of the people in the group, the emotional support. Somebody here loaned me enough money to live on for 1 month so I could quit my job as a dental assistant, which I was doing because that's all that I had ever done and that's all I knew how to do. And she loaned me the money to live on for a month so that I could go out and get a sales job. By this time, I was learning how to pray and learning how to turn things over to God as I understood Him. That was a long process with me too, because when I began to do that, I would look around me all the time and think, was that a sign from God? I drove myself crazy, trying to figure out God's will, and it really is just a part of me now that I get up in the morning and I say my little prayers and I ask God to put somebody in my life that day, and I go on about my business, and it really seems today, no matter what happens, I completely accept it. It's just it's God's will, but that was a hard process for me to learn how to do that, but I got a sales job. I went out every day, and I made a commitment that I would set up these interviews, and I would go in no matter what the place looked like. And I got my first job. I got selling menus and business printing, and it turned out the 3 principal people in that company were practicing alcoholics. And when I got the job that day, I still had that part of me that thought, I wonder why they hired me. And they saw my bumper sticker on my car while I was working there, and after that they locked me out of their offices, and they just kind of left me alone. But about 2 weeks after I started working there, they had all gotten drunk the night after I left one night, and one of them took the other one's wallet home, and I had to go get the wallet, and I got there, and the lady said, no, you're not going to take the wallet home. We're going to go eat lunch with the credit cards in the wallet, and follow me down the street. And she had this big black Cadillac, and it was raining, and it turned sideways, and the cars coming up the hill crashed into it, and she just pulled it over to the side and jumped in my car, and we went to the restaurant, and I did not know what was going on. And then we met the other 2 people. She called them up and told them to come over, and we ended up sitting in this place all afternoon, and one man ended up with his head in his soup, and then I had to go crawl under the table all afternoon and cancel their appointments, and it was really weird. And I left there after a while, and I got a better sales job, and I stayed there a while, and I got a better sales job, and I never did finish any classes, and I ended up having a really good job and earning a good living and taking good care of my kids. And I got married again here and divorced again, and I was around 12 years sober, and I think I just kind of short-circuited, and I was married, and there were just a lot of things going on. And my solution to that, and I'd never done anything like this before, is I packed up my suitcases and I bought a plane ticket and went to Hawaii. Now, I think if you're going to have a nervous breakdown, that's a really good place to go have it. And my brothers lived in Hawaii. It was in a small town, and it was a really small town, and I went there, and I had been there a couple times on vacation, and I knew a lot of the AA people there. So as soon as I got off the plane, I went to the AA meetings. There were about 15 people there that were sober, and I got some part-time jobs, and my first job was in a bar. That's the only job that I could get. I went for every single job that ever appeared in the paper, and that's what I got. So I would serve people drinks and give them my phone number for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I went to the meetings there, and it was talked about a lot that half the people there were smoking marijuana. So I got up one night and I defined sobriety for this group of people. And the ones that were smoking marijuana stood up, and they were holding their chairs, and they were screaming and yelling, and they said I had no right to do that, and I wasn't a doctor. And I smoked cigarettes and drank coffee, and that was a drug, and shut up. And so I went home, and I was really mad, so I wrote a letter to New York, and I reported them, and that made me okay for a few months until I got my letter back from New York, and I stayed there for 7 months, and then I came back here. When I left there, it was forever and ever and ever. I was really wigged out, and I didn't really tell anybody I was going. I pretty much just went, and I wrote my friends' notes and the women I sponsored, and I said, I'm leaving forever. And I came back after 7 months, and that was kind of a hard time in my life because I was 12 years sober. I'd gotten sober in this group. I had been secretary before that, and I sponsored a lot of women when I left. And I came back, and I had no kids. I had let them go live with their dad prior to that. It was the best thing for everybody due to all the circumstances. I had no kids. I had no husband. I had no apartment. I had no money. I got off the plane, and I just thought, what have I done? And I took a job, and Ron was talking about humility. And when I was 12 years sober, and I came back, and I wasn't feeling that great. And I took a job in a messenger service, and I bought this car for $800 that I borrowed from a friend of mine, and the transmission went out right away, 2 gears, first and reverse, so I had second and third. That was okay. And most of the time when people saw me, the back of the car was filled with clothes because I never knew where I was living during that time. And I just lived with people in this group for a while, and I tried living with my first ex-husband and his wife and the kids, but that didn't make me feel very good. And the kids would say "Mom," and neither one of us would know who they were talking to. So it was kind of a hard time, and I would go around delivering these papers from one law firm to another, and I'd go in these law firms, and my friends would be working there, and I'd have my little beeper on, and I'd feel kind of strange, but that's what I needed to do at the time. And then I, got a couple roommates, some women in this group who I had known them both for 10 years, but we never really knew each other, and we became roommates. And things, I remember during that time I would sit in the meeting, and I really didn't want to talk to anybody. I felt real bad, and I would sit in the back of the room with my arms folded, and I would look at all of you and see, and I'd think about what you're doing now and where you started from, and you're all certainly way ahead of me. I've screwed it up one more time. And but the thing is, again, I went to a meeting every single night, and that's what I was trained to do. And I don't think I've ever gone for any period of time, except during one brief rebellion of 2 weeks, and that was the longest I've ever gone. I go to a lot of meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. The thing is, things turned around during that was like a few months during that time, and I wondered one more time, like I had when I was new, is it ever going to get any better? And I would say things like, what's the use and what's the point? And in the early days, people used to say to me, if you drink, you'll die, and I used to think, if you can guarantee it, I would, because this sucks, And I made up little cartoons one time that said, happiness is waking up in the morning and realizing you died in your sleep. And happiness is going to the doctor and finding out you really do have a brain tumor. And I went and got checked for brain tumors a couple times, because I just thought, God, there's got to be something wrong with me other than just alcoholism. And but, it's really neat to look back on that time when I sat around with my arms folded in the meetings, feeling sorry for myself. The conclusion that I came to also after a few months of doing this was that, well, Nancy, I think you better just do the basics of Alcoholics Anonymous and work with new people and do what you're supposed to do. And I just started doing that again. And maybe it was like a year later or a year and a half later, I'm not sure, I was married again, and I was in Europe because I got this new sales job, and I won a trip to Monte Carlo, and it's just amazing. I know a lot of people leave before things turn around, but we all have those times, I think, and that's the good. None of us like this feeling of isolation, and in the beginning, I used to go home from my meetings, and I had this feeling that you all lived together in this big apartment building. You all lived there. I was the only one that got in my car and went home by myself. But it got to the point I just looked forward to meetings. This is where I felt good. This is where I still feel good. And things do turn around, and you just never know. I never thought I'd be living in Minneapolis. It's all right. It's okay because because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I sponsor a lot of neat women there, and I sponsor a couple here. And when I first moved there, you know, I kind of had this little, because I think the bad thoughts are always going to try to creep in, you know, and I thought, well, this is good. I won't get quite so involved, and then I'll be able to spend more time on my career, and I'll become this famous person. And you know what? I had this dead, empty feeling inside of me, like, so what? And I still sponsored Nancy, and she would call me up from here, and that was like my link. I need my links into Alcoholics Anonymous, my anchor. And it seems to me it takes people there a little bit longer to get to know you. And I used to go to the meetings and try to get to know people, and it just took a little time, and now I sponsor a lot of really neat women there. And when I go back, I'm starting Women's Stag because I think that's really important. I think we really need to get to know each other. They have a lot of step meetings there, and that's wonderful. But whenever I was in trouble, I didn't go get the 12 and 12 and sit in my easy chair and read it. You know, I'd call up a friend and I'd talk to them, or I'd call my sponsor. And I know the steps are important, but, you know, I just feel that our conversations and our getting to know each other and our sharing and our honesty with each other is so important. And I'd like to thank Pat for asking me to share here tonight. And Pat and Vince and Marianne came to Minnesota in the end of May for the convention, and we just had a wonderful time, and they're all good friends. And we have so many wonderful friends here, and it feels great to be here. And so thank you very much.
Of Alcoholics Anonymous, and all members of the community are welcome to attend. The single most important aspect of AA recovery, however, is the principle of one alcoholic relating to another alcoholic. Therefore, only alcoholics actually participate in our meetings. If your primary problem is other than alcoholism, we think it would also be helpful to you to contact an anonymous organization which more specifically deals with your addiction. In any case, we hope that what you learn here may be helpful to your recovery and or understanding.
I'm Ron Story. I'm an alcoholic. I just recently moved out to Southern California from Kentucky, so yeah, I knew I was going to get that. Anyway, I lived all my life in Kentucky up until just a couple months ago. I moved out here, and I was raised in a family of Southern Baptists. My father's family was all Southern Baptist, and my mother's family gambled, drank, and smoked. And that's I kind of went from one side to the other. I'd stay with my grandparents on the Southern Baptist and then listen to Billy Graham, and then go to the other side and gamble and get the guilt. So, but finally the alcohol and the gambling took over. It won, and that's how I ended up here. I started out drinking and gambling pretty early in my life. My first blackout was 14, and I really didn't know that I was. I thought what I was doing was all right. I was, like I said, that side of the family was gambling and drinking. My grandfather was a chronic alcoholic. He died that way, and my grandmother's, all of her people were alcoholics. And for us, it doesn't really make any difference, but I believe it's hereditary, because I didn't develop that at 14. They already go into blackouts. And most any time I ever drink, I don't want to stop once I start, and that never got any better. It only got worse. And drugs entered my life late. It entered it early, and I got away from them because I really didn't like them. The alcohol is what I really always liked. And finally, getting close to the end of my drinking, I was blacking out so bad and ended up in jail so much, and wrecking cars and doing waking up in places that I didn't know how I'd gotten there. and I got introduced to Coke, and that's how I ended up on that. But it was the alcohol that I really definitely wanted. It was the only thing that really would give me relief at that particular point. Early in my life, I didn't get any relief. I didn't really enjoy life unless I was drunk. It may sound, but I didn't enjoy feeling. Dr. Spock was my hero. John Wayne might have been somebody else, but Spock was mine because he didn't feel, and I didn't like feeling. And I didn't learn how to feel until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I really, how I ended up here, I was almost dead. I ended up in treatment. I about drank myself to death. I'd already had alcoholic hepatitis, varicose esophagus, bleeding inside, and I still couldn't quit it. There was a gentleman that described my compulsion almost to the way it was, and when I get the craving for alcohol, it's like I'm underwater and I'm wanting to come up for air, and that's how bad I want it. And that was something that I had to that I begged when I was in treatment. I begged God to relieve me. I got the spiritual part, or as much as I could get of the spiritual part earlier, because I had enough that I knew that if you asked for help, you could get it, because I'd asked for help a lot of times. I've been in some bad deals down through, drinking and gambling both, and I'd always ask God to get me out of them, and I'd quit this or quit that and make bargains, but anyway, they'd always get me out of them. So anyway, I knew in treatment I really did. I got down and I begged, for that compulsion to leave, because had it not, I can't fight that compulsion. I can't. It's too overpowering for me. And today I don't have it. I don't want it back. And I'm enjoying AA more today. It's taken me a long time here to get to where I enjoy it. To start with, the only reason I was here is because I had to. If I hadn't gotten here, I was going to die. And I really didn't care if I died, but I didn't want to die like that. I'm glad this light's on. I can see. I didn't have to watch. They have a light up there that tell you when you're running out of time. But anyway, I didn't. I really didn't want to quit. I really wanted to control it, but I just absolutely couldn't. And but anyway, after I got when I finally entered, that started a growth process. It's been a slow growth for me. I don't grow that quick, but I had to get in touch with feelings I'd never had before. I didn't realize I had so much fear. I was full of fear. Was there 200 and some phobias, and apparently I must have had them all. But anyway, I've gotten a lot better since I've been here, and I'm not nearly as. But getting before y'all people here, I can't even believe I'm doing this, because at one time I couldn't even walk in a room where people were. I didn't want to be around people. I wanted to be by myself. In my car was probably 50% of my drinking was in the car, and that's why I slept a lot of times, was in the car. And because I get so drunk wherever I was, that's where I'd sleep. And but today, and to top it all off with, I can't believe where I'm at today, and I really enjoy it. I'm working for my sponsor down to Midnight Mission, and I enjoy working with those, with the people down there. It's pretty rewarding, and it helped deflate an ego that I really needed deflated. And I don't know how. I really don't know how I ended up there. I voluntarily asked to come and begged him to come down there. And then after I got there, I thought I didn't know what the hell I'd done. Because I'm from Kentucky and I hadn't seen anything like that before. But it's really been great. I think God really took care of me in this particular instance. It's deflated my ego where I know I'm not all that important. He told me tonight I wasn't all that important either. That y'all wouldn't remember me up here talking tomorrow. I told him I was worried about it, and he said if I remembered who talked last week at this 10 minute, and I told him someone, he said no, that was 2 weeks ago, and he said they'll say the same thing about you next week. They won't remember you. So anyway, that helped. I'm glad he said it. I've worked these steps as best I could, and I went to a step study back in in Kentucky, what really helped me, the steps is the only way out to give me relief. And there's a page in that big book that I was talking to a friend in here I met since I've been here, at page 449, and I wished I could live my life to that page each and every day. It's on acceptance, and I don't do it. I try to do as best I can. I don't always. I'm sure not going to be perfect, and I know I'm not going to be perfect. And my time is about running out. Well, I'm glad to be here in Southern California, and I thank y'all for being here. I'm glad to have met this specific group. I didn't know I was going to get this. This is one of the rewards of coming out here. Y'all don't realize maybe how good this group is, because I've seen other groups, and I know how I have something to compare them to. And y'all really are good. I've heard your speakers, and they're very honest, and I'm glad I've run out of time, so thank y'all.
Our second 10-minute speaker is Julie T.
Hi, my name is Julie. I'm an alcoholic. Well, I thank Pat for asking me to share. Done this twice before. I'm really nervous this time, though. Anyways, I'll tell it what it was like, what happened, what it's like now in about 10 minutes. In about 10 minutes. I started drinking because of how I feel right now, and because of trying to be comfortable. I was never comfortable in my own skin. I can never remember being comfortable. I always felt like I was less than everybody else, and I always felt like I could never be up there with anybody else. And I remember, I'll tell you this, I got some pictures from my parents about 3 or 4 months ago when I was a little girl, about, I guess, 8 or 9 years old, and I remember I had a rope around my neck. And this brought to my mind to recall, when I was a kid, we were playing cops and robbers, or whatever it was, and I remember I forgot it was around my neck, and I hung myself accidentally. And I remember I had to get white medicine, around my neck. I remember lying to these kids at school to get attention. I told them that my head fell off and I glued it with Elmer's, just so I had all these people going, ooh, all these kids, and I really liked that attention, And I lied a lot, to get attention, and because left to myself on my own, I didn't feel like I was good enough. And, these kind of feelings like these started me to be drinking. I really liked drinking. That's why I drank. I liked what it did for me. And I had my first drink when I was 18 years old. I was out of the house. I thought everything was going to be great, because I was away from them, and I was able to do my own thing, and I had my own job. And I remember I had my first drink in the office party. I remember it was a vodka and orange juice. I remember that I felt really, really good. After the third drink, I found that I could fall down and it wouldn't hurt. I thought, this is really nice. And eventually, though, I started drinking, and I'd come in the morning on Monday with hangovers. And I had to be a switchboard, and I was a receptionist, and I put the wrong people on hold, and these buttons would drive me crazy on the phones. And my boss called me in, and he said, he just let me go. He said, you look like you want to party, so we're going to give you time to party. He just said, get out of here, pretty much. And, I liked being on my own. I didn't want to go home and live under those same rules, as my parents. They were pretty strict, I don't blame my alcoholism on my family. We weren't religious or anything like that. I think for a while we were Catholic and then Presbyterian, and then there was just my dad, and his laws of what counted. That was it. And, but I knew that my parents wouldn't put up with my behavior, like late nights and all that, so I wanted to stay out on my own. And so, I found this ad in the Berkeley bar, and it was Diane's rap sessions. I thought all I had to do was talk or massage. I don't know, anyway. And there was more to it than that. And when I saw how much money I made at the end of all that, I thought, well, this is real. I didn't bother me after that. I thought, this is better than what I was making anyways, And, I did that for a long time. I did that till I got sober. And how I got here, through that whole time, I began to drink. I was drinking or taking something every single day. And around the end of my drinking, I didn't come here because I wanted to stop drinking. I followed him and was willing to go to any lengths to get him out here. And when he didn't work out after I got here, I stayed here anyway because I stayed here long enough to identify with the feelings, and I learned that I was an alcoholic. One of my first sponsors was a woman named Karen D. And I remember talking to her because I didn't have a resume at all for a job. I remember I couldn't put down where I'd been, It wasn't legal before I got here. See, I never filled out an income tax form until I got here. And I remember asking her if I could go back to doing what I was doing when I was out there drinking, and she said no. Nobody will be able to identify with turning tricks. I said okay, and then I didn't like that, and I got another sponsor, and she wasn't going to put up with that either, and that was Mary Ann Kay, as you probably know. She wouldn't put up with that either, and I stayed here, I stayed here, and what happened is that I got to talk about my slip I had. That's always important. I had a slip, and I didn't tell anybody about it. I mean, I took cakes. I had a watch, every night, I took cakes and I lied in front of everybody. I was so afraid of what you thought about me. I was afraid to say, what a loser, what a jerk, And every time I'd be in a meeting and try to talk to somebody, that would be in my mind. And I couldn't stay in the now of the conversation. And I'd go home, and I'd be the one with this garbage. So finally, I just told my sponsor, and I caught that up. And I feel better since I did that. It's like when I have a bad day or anything is really bad, I know on my sobriety date, and I know exactly when I'm sober, and I can look anybody in the eye and say, this is the day I'm sober. And that helps out a lot for me. And what happened with my second sponsor is I lied to her. I didn't get better. My first sponsor said I was like an F-up when I got, I was. I'm not like a rocket to stardom, as they say. And I lied to her, and I wasn't being honest with her. And I really cared a lot what she thought about me, and I'd make up things to make me look good, and it wasn't working out. And so I got another sponsor, and she asked me to share tonight. And I respect the sponsor I have now. I'm not into how she really thinks about me. As long as she gives me an answer, I don't have to worry about how I say things to her sometimes. I know I'm going to get an answer, And that, for me, it works for me that way. It works really good. And I got married in February to a guy in this group. And I've been told that as long as he's none of my business, we're fine. And things that he does. I just have to look after what I do, my part, and that's really hard to do. Being married, I'm finding a lot of my defects. I'm finding out how selfish I am, what's mine is ours. You know what I mean? It goes like that. That's how it really goes. And that's hard to deal with because, I've been on my own earnings, and then I'm about 33, and now we're all sharing together. And it's really hard a lot. And also, like, I remember, a lot has happened for me here. And there's a lot of people I've made friends with here, too. I'm kind of a loner, though, and I have a few friends that I have. And one of my good friends, she went to Europe about 2 months ago, and it's like I've had to go out and get more involved, and a lot more activities and stuff, and make new friends. And that's really hard for me, probably hard for everybody to do, because I guess left to myself, it's probably a lot of you feel that way. It's like, I don't like to talk to people. Why bother? It's like you don't want to hear what I have to say, and I don't want to hear what you have to say anyways. That's left to myself, and I just I'd rather just sit and isolate. But I haven't been able to do that. Nobody here has let me do that, and I've been able to participate in my recovery still. I'm like I say, I've been sober almost 5 years now, and I've learned a lot here. And my time is a little short, but that's all I have to say. Thanks for letting me share.
celebrate AA birthdays at this meeting. We define an AA birthday as 365 days of continuous sobriety without alcohol, pills, marijuana, heroin, anything that affects you from the neck up. If you're a regular attender of this meeting and you'd like to celebrate your birthday with us, please see me when you come in the door that night. We'll be happy to share a cake with you. We have a number of those birthdays tonight. Our first one is for 1 year for Kathy G.
Hi, I'm Kathy. I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to thank Sharon for that cake, my sponsor Linda, who couldn't be here, my previous sponsors Lori for getting me here, Nancy for putting up with me, the Pacific Group Women's Softball team, my higher power, and all of you. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Kathy. We have a 2-year birthday for Ann D.
Hi, my name's Ann. I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to thank God for getting me here and keeping me here. I'd like to thank my sponsor, Isabella, for this past year, her love and her brutal honesty. I'd like to thank Clancy for the structure, Pacific Group, and AA as a whole for giving me my life back.
Happy birthday, Ann. We have a 4-year birthday for Jim B.
Jim, I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank Sandy for another year of sponsorship and his example. Don N. for the structure of Sandy. Clancy for the structure. Don and this group. The Class of 85. Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole. Pacific Group. And all of you. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Jim. We have a 4-year birthday for Kevin McSee.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to thank Vince for that cake and a good year of sponsorship. I would like to thank Clancy and Charlotte for the art, my higher power, and the Class of 85. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Kevin. We have a 5-year birthday for Greg B.
Hi, I'm Greg. I'm an alcoholic. Hi. I'd like to thank Joe for giving me that cake and being a big part of my sobriety since I've been around this group. I'd like to thank Chuck N for all his help this last year. I'd like to thank the Class of 84. Yeah. Woo. And I want to thank Clancy, all my friends in this group, all of you. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Greg. We have a 6-year birthday for Maureen L.
Hi, I'm Maureen. I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to thank Pat for giving me my cake, for her sponsorship and love and support this last year. I'd like to thank Clancy for his dedication and the consistency. I'd like to thank the Class of 83, and the Pacific Group, and Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Maureen. Our next birthday is for 12 years for Mary M.
My name is Mary, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm so pleased to be 12 years sober. I really would like to thank my sponsor, Clancy, who has shown me a lot of courage this year and helped me not to run when I wanted to run from things that were happening in my life. I would very much like to thank all my friends in the Pacific Group who were so kind to my husband and I this year. I would like to thank the women I sponsor, and I would very much like to thank my husband who walked through a very difficult year with a lot of dignity.
Happy birthday, Mary. A 15-year birthday for Jeff C.
Hi, I'm Jeff Clark, a very grateful alcoholic. And it's great to be here tonight. I don't know where the 15 years has gone, but it's been good. And it's gone real fast. It's in the past. And I've been focused on today, and I'm a person of very few words, so I brought a few tonight. I don't know if I'll be able to get to use them all. But I want to thank my sponsor. It took him, now, I was in and out of AA for 3 years almost before I was able to establish my firm sobriety date of July the 2nd, 1974. And it took him 5 months for that to establish since we met. And it took a different kind of sponsorship, and all about getting sober was so much different from what I expected and much better than what I expected. And they took book on us. We got sober in the valley, and they took book on us that we wouldn't stay sober. And our credibility and our dignity was just shot for a long, long time. And it was lean for us in the beginning as my sponsor was beginning a business that has flourished. And for this, I'm all grateful. And AA is such a people-oriented business. When you come to the Pacific Group and you meet so many people of various areas, and the same thing is what puts you together, spirituality and the disease. It's amazing what happens and how it maintains and grows. And for all of this, I'm grateful to Clancy and to Charlotte for their accessibility and wisdom, and Keith and Sally, and all the rest of the Pacific Group and all here tonight. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Jeff. Our next birthday is for 18 years for Lynn W.
Hi, my name is Lynn Weber, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi. I'm glad to be here tonight, and I'm glad to be celebrating 18 years. I would like to thank Clancy for being my sponsor and for putting his protective cloak about me so many years ago and teaching me how to live, because I didn't know how to live before. I have not done... My life is different today, and I have not had my face broken apart. I have not awakened at Norton Air Force Base or any of those weird places. I haven't done a lot of things, and I had a lot of fun drinking, but then it turned on me, and I spent a lot of years trying to capture the fun again. And now that I am living a sober life, I have fun again. I would like to... Clancy is wonderful. I would also like to thank my husband for being a part of my life and making a good life today. I'd like to thank my buddies in the class of 71 and the quilters. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Lynn. And our last birthday is for 20 years for John F.
My name is John. I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank God and AA. I want to thank my sponsor, Harvey, for the sharing and his example. I want to thank Clancy and Charlotte. And I want to thank Pat for being secretary. And I want to thank everybody here. Thank you.
Happy birthday, John. That's all the birthdays tonight. We had 10 birthdays and 87 years of total sobriety. We have a custom in the Pacific Group where we donate, each person takes a cake, donates $1 for each candle on their cake. We collect that money. At the end of the year, we submit it to New York office as our donation. Last year, we submitted over $4,500 just from our birthday candles alone, and so it's a pretty significant